2 weeks ago, I made a community post on YouTube and I opened it up for questions. A lot of you guys showed up, and so we're going to get to every single one of your questions on here. There's a lot of really insightful things that I have to share. Really good inquiries. I mean, seriously, a lot of you guys are going to learn a ton from this type of video. It's just a smorgasbord of information, kind of like an information dump. So why don't we hop right into it? So up first, with a nice hard name, as you guys all do, adamantium machine. How does one know what areas or rivers can be camped? And so while that's a very complicated question to explain, just with navigability laws and things like that, my biggest advice for you, if you're seeking out maybe a place to go for your first time, is stick to the main rivers that you've seen people kayak camp. And then once you're out on them, stick to only camping on islands. That is going to be a pretty safe bet that you're in a perfectly legal situation to camp. Now, of course, I always have a disclaimer. Make sure you're very familiar with the Texas navigability laws or whatever state that you're in, because ultimately going out and being knowledgeable if you're approached is going to be the best possible scenario. All right. I don't even know how to pronounce the second one. I'll show it on the screen though. The Jercheron. What are some of the best accessories for kayaking? So aside from needing your kayak, your paddle, and your life vest, those are three things that I would just never even go on without. I have a few videos kind of highlighting a few things that I really enjoy. So probably one of the most abstract ones that you'll come across is my dog leash. So in Texas, it's really important because you drag a lot. I just attach a dog leash to the front or the back of my kayak and use it to pull up or down river. And that's been super helpful. Another thing that is real nice, I would say good water shoes. And I haven't totally nailed down the water shoes that I'm like, yeah, these are gonna be the water shoes for the rest of my life, because I've used Chacos, but Chacos are a little bit difficult because, I don't know, I wear blisters in them quite often. And then also I'll stub my toe on rocks if it's a hiking section, which we have tons of here in Texas. So yeah, good water shoes, which I don't have a recommendation for yet, but I'm working through it. I've bought some cheap Amazon ones. A dog leash, and then let's see, what else? Obviously, yeah, so this person writes, bags. Obviously have to shamefully plug Remote Designs and the dry bag lineup that I offer. Certainly, you can't go kayak camping without dry bags. So go pick some up. All right, moving on to Caps Lock. Love your videos. Hey, appreciate it. Thank you also for the marriage wishes. Would love to see a video on the Devil's River. Me too. I would love to get out to the Devil's River. In fact, it's one of my bucket list locations. Now, I would say the Devil's is probably the most popular river for kayak camping. Anytime I meet somebody that isn't really in the scene, they've done the Devil's, but they haven't done anywhere else. And it's kind of like the Rio Grande and the Devil's River are kind of like the two, and yeah, those are kind of like the two rivers that Texans assume are the only ones you can go kayak camp, and that's just simply not true. But the Devil's looks incredible. There's a lot of human traffic on the Devil's, which is kind of interesting. Even though it's known as one of the most pristine rivers, it does have a lot of restrictions. It's very expensive to do because you have to get shuttles and you have to get permits from the state. So there's a lot of red tape associated with the Devil's. And me and the crew I go with, we're kind of more of a lay low, go out, enjoy ourselves, and get on stretches of river that you're just not going to see other people on. The Devil's looks awesome. And then they have a follow-up question. How do we handle our business on overnight trips? And generally, on our 2-day trips that are 2 days, 1 night, that isn't an issue. You can hold it. But on our longer trips, like the pack rafting trip I did with Pete Beck and the River Kings up in North Carolina, we kind of just, we're responsible about it. We treat it like animals do. I don't think I need to say more than that, but there are certain places like the Devil's River that require you to pack it in and pack it out. I've never done that. I've also never done the Devil's or a stream that requires it. But I can't imagine that's very pleasant. However, with the amount of people that do kayak camp the Devil's, I imagine that's real necessary, or else you're just gonna have human waste everywhere. Okay, that's a great question. Scooter Barrow. When's your next kayak camping video? I really enjoy those. Appreciate it, Scooter. The next one I have completely filmed up. We did the Guadalupe River recently this winter, and I have all the footage. I just haven't started editing it yet, and we'll get into that in a question that's a little bit later on, but coming soon, coming very soon, now that the season's picking back up. Okay, Outdoor Thor. That is a really cool name. I'm a backpacker that's getting into kayaking. Where do you recommend that I begin? Any simple tips for the kayaking itself or any general gear tips? Because you're a backpacker, you have all of the most expensive gear already, which is very important. The only difference between backpacking and kayak camping is that kayak camping utilizes dry bags, and instead of shoving everything into your backpack, you just strap it onto your kayak. So from there, you're sitting in a really good spot because dry bags aren't overly expensive. In fact, my 20-liter roll top dry bags are in that $20, $30 range. And then the backpacks out there, they span in price, but $300 gets you a premium option. That also gets you into the premium duffels, and there's a whole bunch of other options in between there. But of course, I'm partial to the remote designs. Okay, where do you recommend that I begin? Anytime somebody is starting out for the first time, I always recommend a familiar river with easy, non-ambiguous put in and take out locations. So that's going to be your major road crossings where there's clearly people parking overnight. Do your trip research, find a place that is exactly like that. Any simple tips for the kayaking itself? Yeah, start on a river that doesn't have a ton of rapids or strainers. You want to be safe. At the end of the day, it's no fun not coming home to your family. Any general gear tips? Get a nice paddle. I think that's really important. And it doesn't have to be some $300 option. Even though paddles are worth their weight in gold, it will make your trip a lot easier and better. But getting a nice paddle it goes a long way. I was talking with my buddy Jacob on Instagram DM, and he just picked up some Pelican ones, and he is stoked to use them. I myself will be using Aquabound this year, and I'm really excited because I've seen their company a lot, and I've never used their paddles. So I'll be testing those out. All right. What made you choose the Ascend H10, and what are the pros and the cons? Great question. I'm going to be coming out with an Ascend H10 review sometime this season because it is one of the more popular questions that I do get. The Ascend H10, when I was looking for an upgrade from my Old Town Vapor 10, I wanted to try out the hybrid space. And what a hybrid kayak is, it's basically a mixture of a canoe, it has that open concept like a canoe, but it also is kind of like a kayak. So a sit-in kayak or a sit-on-top kayak. What I like about it, you can haul gear. It's really easy to store. Honestly, I don't even bolt my stuff down if we're not going to go over rapids. And the great thing about the H10 is that when you do put gear into it, you have a really low center of gravity, so your control is pretty good. Unlike the sit-on-tops like the Vapor 10, where you have to stack your gear on top of the kayak, that makes you a little top heavy, and you don't necessarily want that. The downsides, it looks like a bathtub, therefore when you're going down rapids, it does fill up with water like a bathtub. So make sure you have a bilge pump ready because it does have a tendency to take waves over the bow. However, I think its functionality makes it worth it for me. But highly recommend it. I've beaten it up. The only downside really are the hauling handles. They're pretty cheap feeling, I guess. They're not made of hard plastic. It's kind of like essentially screwed into the kayak with fabric. So I've already had both of mine blow out, but other than that, it's an awesome kayak. I love it. I've had it for years. It's probably the kayak I've used the longest. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Drew. That was a good question. James, ever have issues staking out tents on the riverbeds due to rocks? And do you ever have trouble finding hammock spots? So we'll address the hammock first. Yes, you will have trouble finding hammock spots unless you go to a river in the hill country. We have a lot of cypress trees. So finding enough hammock spots for the whole crew is generally tough. On the Pedernales River, we did have a situation where we only were able to hang in sapling sycamore trees. And I fell a couple times during the night, which was just a huge inconvenience. But generally speaking, tent is easier to find a good spot. Hammocks are a little bit more tricky, but I do sleep better in a hammock. So it can be worth it. But we have, actually, it seems like every single trip, it seems like we're running out of river to find a good spot for everybody to camp, because we usually have a couple guys. And then the first part of that is, do you ever have issues staking out tents on the riverbeds due to rocks? And this is probably an answer that's going to shock a lot of you guys, but I don't really stake out my tents. So I have a fully freestanding tent by Sierra Designs this year. And last year I was using a North Face tent, the Stormbreak 2. And those tents did not require tension. Most of the time that we're camping, if it's not going to be raining, I don't even put up my rain fly. And usually the rain fly is what you're going to be staking. I kind of just let the tent hang free. If you have winds that are blowing your tent away with all your gear in it, you have bigger problems than your tent being staked in. If you do need to put up your rain fly, then yeah, there's oftentimes sand or bigger rocks. I'll just tie the rain fly to a log or a rock and use that, because over time with your tent stakes, hammering them into rocks, they'll just erode, break. But yeah, it's never really been an issue. You can tie them off to trees, branches, roots, rocks, if you don't have tent stakes. Okay, Brad. If you have to recommend one river or stretch of water to kayak, what/where would it be? That all depends on skill level, but I think my favorite place to go is the Frio River. As you guys have seen in my videos, it's stunning. I mean, the crystal clear water is insane. It generally has okay flow, but for the past year and a half, it hasn't been. So I've only done an upriver trip when it was at like 20 CFS. All we did was drag and paddle the deep pools. We only did about a mile, but it was still a blast. And that's the one that I took my wife on. So guys, definitely check that one out. It's beautiful out there. If you have enough flow rate, I highly suggest giving it a shot. You are going to have some landowner issues on a lot of the river because trespassing is an issue just because of the amount of people that go out to the Frio. So I would just recommend choosing a stretch that goes through the middle of nowhere and setting up camp there, because that's generally your best bet. All right. Thanks, Scott. There's a reply on Scott's comment. They say the Guadalupe River. Upper Guadalupe, so that section above Canyon Lake, yeah, that's the real deal. It's really cool up there. The Guadalupe generally has better flow than most rivers around because it's drainage based and not solely reliable on springs. So it's not the cleanest, but it's still really pretty. There's a lot of opportunities for hammock camping as well as tent camping. Great recommendation. All right, Anthony, what's going on, man? When are you coming back to North Carolina to adventure with the River Kings? I talk with Pete Beck over at the River Kings often, and he's actually scheduled a trip in Missouri this spring. So, heavily considering that, if it works out with my schedule, then I'd love to meet back up with the gang. And it'd be the whole River Kings gang. Love those guys. So I'm hoping that it'll work out. But I have no immediate plans to go back to North Carolina. You know, with COVID, traveling isn't the easiest necessarily, but never let that stop you from getting outdoors. That's as far away from people as you can get. All right, KV. As a complete beginner, do you recommend renting a kayak to test them out, practice on rentals, or a certain body of water? Great question. There's a lot of people that are looking for those beginner level kayaks. In fact, I would say that's the majority of people on this channel and the majority of people on YouTube. So if that's you, you're the majority, which is good. So this is a fantastic question for you guys. If you look at shops like here in Texas, we'll call Austin Canoe and Kayak, TG Canoes, they will oftentimes have days at lakes where you can go demo a bunch of boats. Sometimes it'll be hosted by one particular brand. Sometimes it'll be just their demo fleet. And that is a great way to go out and test kayaks. Granted, those are going to be the kayaks probably in the $500+ range. They're not going to be your big box store kayaks. So if that's what you're looking for, to just jump straight into a nice kayak, go check out your local outfitter. They'll probably have a demo day, especially as things pick up this spring and summer. If you're looking for a big box store, it's kind of tough because renting is a great option. I do recommend that. It's usually about $40 a day. So for $40 a day, if you rent for 3 days, $120, that's really not too bad for trying out a kayak. I would keep an eye out on the used market as well, depending where you are. So like if you're in Nebraska, I imagine there's a lot less kayaking going on than a place like Houston, where we have the coast and rivers and a bunch of stuff going on. So yeah, I myself have never rented. I've only ever bought on the used market. And then if I've ultimately decided that's not something I want to get into, then I'll just put it up for sale for whatever I bought it for. And that's a good way. But you do have to store kayaks, and that's an issue a lot of people run into. Great question. All right, Jesse, what it do, Gaywood? Hey, how's it going? First and foremost, congratulations on your marriage. Thank you. Appreciate that. For those of you who don't know, I got married in July this summer. It was really special out in Colorado. I don't know if you're a man of faith, but I am. And may God keep on blessing both of you with many strong, healthy, and adventurous years to come. I am a man of faith, so thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, we're hoping to stay healthy, happy, and prosperous. All right, so he's seen my where to park video, but my head still doesn't make sense, and I've watched it a couple times. I know at the starting point you need to find an access off the highway to the river, but is someone supposed to park at the end of the kayak trip downriver and leave a vehicle there? You're making complete sense, and that's a great question, because the logistics of a kayak camping trip can be tricky. In fact, that's one of the trickiest parts. Establishing 2 access points with parking at each. We never use outfitters. That's not to say that you shouldn't use an outfitter, because that's a great way to be able to park at their shop and they'll take you to the start. You can kayak down and they'll pick you up at the takeout. It's usually going to be a more popular section of river. So if you're looking for something remote, that isn't always your best bet. Places like the Devil's River require outfitters in most instances. So it's a really good option. I do always recommend that if you're okay with it. For us, we always meet at the takeout, and then we'll drop a car there, and then we'll meet at the put-in, and then we'll just kayak down, and then since we have that car at the end, we can put a bunch of our gear. Sometimes we can make it in one trip back up to the put-in, but usually we just leave a couple of guys with the gear at the takeout, and then we go get the rest of the cars and bring them back to the takeout, load up, and get on our way. That's been the best method we found. Okay, Joseph, in the process of putting together a 216-mile trip from the Tuscarawas River down to the Ohio River. Oh my gosh, that's huge. Going to be around 5-day trip, and tips for food and storage. Packing super light. Yeah, so for a trip like that, I'm going to go ahead and recommend dehydrated food. So the longest trip I've done is the 5 days pack rafting trip, where we needed food that was light, and we just brought stoves to boil up water, and then you pour them into those dehydrated foods. That worked really well for us. I think they personally taste fine. We did Mountain House. I know there's Packet Gourmet and other options out there. I don't know what the supply and demand curve is looking like right now, but last year was pretty out of whack just with the amount of people getting outdoors. So yeah, as far as food and storage, dehydrated meals. For storage, I'm not sure what kind of a craft that you're going in, but I imagine it's some sort of a canoe or a touring, and you're just gonna have to pack light. If it's during summer, you don't have to pack as many layers. So, for me, I'd probably just take a bathing suit and a couple shirts and then some clothes to sleep in. I'm not sure how clean the river is either. So whenever we're on the Frio River, you can just bathe right in it. But yeah, packing super light. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know if I totally answered your question very well, because if you're doing a 216-mile trip, you're probably more experienced at this than I am. So, Joseph, best of luck. Please keep me updated with how that trip goes. That's going to be probably one that you remember forever. All right, Michael, can I come on a trip? I have all my own gear. Man, I wish I could include everybody that asked to come on a trip. I really do. And maybe a subscriber trip is in the books when all this COVID business is done with. But there are no plans right now. I would love to do day trips and overnight trips with the subscribers, though. I think that'd be really fun. I've seen a lot of people do that, and absolutely I would consider working that into my flow. All right, David, what's going on, man? Thanks for always watching the videos. when you going on the Buffalo River with us. The Buffalo up in Arkansas looks amazing, and that's also another one of those rivers that's on my bucket list. I might not get to it this year, especially if I do the Missouri River with Pete, but definitely considering it for the years to come. Who knows? Maybe I'll get out there. I imagine fall is pretty. All right, Justin, how do you track your progress as progress along the river to avoid things like making a wrong turn or missing your takeout or making sure you are making good time? Fantastic question, because we do this throughout the day to make sure that we're going an appropriate speed and covering enough miles. Typically, we are not covering enough miles until the evening, and then we have to bust it out and haul a couple miles, and then we set up in the dark. So I don't know if I'm the best at advice, but here's our methodology for doing it. I spend quite a bit of time mapping out our route, and what I do is I'll find very distinct turns in the river, and I'll mark out the mileage that is from a certain landmark. So say I wanted to camp 75% of the way into the trip, I will put a pin there that says 7 miles from the put-in, 2 miles from the takeout. That way I know I need to make it there. And I'll just use like Google Earth, honestly. Pull up satellite on your phone. I don't use any fancy tracking app. And then at that point, you can see, are you making good time? Do you have a lot of mileage to cover? And usually you aren't covering enough mileage. So yeah, always plan shorter than you think. Great question. Hey, Tommy, how's it going, man? Your channel has inspired me to begin looking into this hobby. That's really cool and not something that I ever thought my videos would turn into. So thank you. I do get messages about that, and literally it makes my day every time I get one. It's 2020. 2021 is a cool time period when you can share hobbies like this with random strangers and then, build a community and have friends. So always appreciate you showing up in the comments. It's really cool. So he's in California. However, as a complete newbie, I do have some analysis paralysis questions. 2 main concerns. All right. Number 1, how do you plan out a route? And how can you be certain that there aren't any potential lethal hazards, rapids, or waterfalls downstream? Do you only paddle rivers that are known to be traveled by other paddlers? I would say if that is a concern, then you should only paddle rivers that are being traveled by other paddlers at this point. And then once you've built up skill, done a couple trips, then you can branch out and kind of plan your own excursions and get a little bit more intricate, because there is no way to know on a new stretch of river what hazards may exist. We always assume there are going to be some. So as we're paddling, we're very cautious. Especially with rapids, we'll get out and scout if it's a new stretch, and then also with downed trees. Generally speaking, we haven't had too much of an issue because in Texas, our water doesn't really run all that fast. But if you're in California, you're going up to the Sierras where you have a lot of water, a lot of rapids, I would be a little bit more concerned. So yeah, stick to the more traveled places. And then part 2, how do you get back upstream once you finish your float? Can you ever, or would you ever, paddle against the current? If you tuned into the trip where I took Lisa up on the Frio, we did an upstream paddle because there was just not enough water and we didn't want to bring 2 cars. And so we traveled upstream, and while that was a little bit tough, it wasn't too bad because we didn't cover a whole lot of mileage, and that's a way to get around needing 2 cars. How do you get back upstream once you finish your float? I kind of touched on that in a previous question, but you can either use an outfitter or bring multiple cars, and that'll solve your problem. Yep. So don't let analysis paralysis hold you up. Get out there, start. That's the best way to do this. All right. Hey, Joey. Any mountain bike kayak trips planned for 2021? Would love to see you bros paddle Big Bend. Hey, I would love to see the bros paddle Big Bend as well. In fact, that is one of the top 5 rivers that I want to do. If you guys haven't seen Big Bend, we're talking cascading 1,000-foot cliffs that plunge like literally vertically into the river. It's incredible, and we're definitely going to do a trip out there. I'm glad you asked about mountain biking because we do a lot of mountain biking. I've just never brought my GoPro along. However, in 2021, that is going to change. So be on the lookout for that. Kathy, any chance you'll be bringing back the Remote Designs backpack? I know you said once they're gone, but I'm hoping. I would be hopeful if I were you too, because I'm looking to restock this spring just before kayaking season. So be on the lookout. You guys completely sold out the backpacks, in like a month's time. So definitely doing a restock, and it's been really cool seeing you guys use them. And so far, 0 returns, which has been pretty encouraging. That means y'all are using, abusing, and they're working out great, and it's what you're looking for. So thank you to literally every single one of you who has ordered one. It means the world. Every time an order comes through, it makes my day. Just like seeing pictures of them out in the wild. It's really cool. Mac. Hey Mac, thank you for commenting on literally every single video, community post, and hope you're doing well, man. I agree with you, man. Let's go 2021 started. Totally agree. 2021 can only get better. Me and my coworker are trying to plan a kayak camping trip right now. Stick to it. I know you've had your troubles with broken ankles and things like that, but 2021 is going to be your year. I have a feeling. Caleb, ever done the Paluxy River? Oh man, we were about 2 days away from doing the Paluxy. I talked to a guy that lives out in Glen Rose. I think it's Glen Rose. It's really close to the Paluxy, but there was a huge rainstorm that swept across Texas, and the Paluxy just kept getting hammered by rain, and it was flowing so insanely well for a couple of days. But by the time it was the weekend and we were able to go out on a trip, it had already gotten to a point where it wouldn't really be the best idea to paddle it. So potentially hopeful for a spring trip. We'll see. It all depends on where the rain falls. But yeah, that'd be sweet. All right, Colin. Where are you planning to go with your channel? Continuing kayak trip vids or moving into something else? Fishing, mountain biking? Colin, that is an awesome question. And this is one of the heavy hitting questions because I haven't really posted a whole lot of videos lately. I like to take December, January, February but February will pick it back up. I like to take those times to take a step back, refresh, rejuvenate, and let the creative juices flow again. So as I've been doing that, I've been thinking about what direction I want the channel to go. 2020 was a huge year for the channel. It was completely pivotal. We grew by an insane amount in my book. I still can't believe it. And I want to continue doing more of the same. Kayak camping is a huge part of my hobbies. One of the issues, though, is that you can only do it so often, right? So disappearing for an entire weekend at a time and kind of bailing out of town, it's tough because every time I do go kayak camping, I'm driving at least 4 hours. Where I live isn't necessarily the best place. Where I live isn't necessarily where I want to go kayak camping every weekend. So because of that, I want to start including more videos like mountain biking. Me and the guys go very often. We hit up local trails, and I think I'm going to start posting those. So definitely keep an eye out for more biking content. And then, at the end of the day, the YouTube channel has just been an outlet for me to share my adventure, my camping, my kayaking, my mountain biking, and just cool things I do with friends. So I'd like to do more of the same. Colin, I really appreciate it. Let me know in the comments if you guys would be interested in some mountain biking type content, because I'll start filming it when I go. All right, will you be making more of your dry bag backpacks? Hey Laura, yes. Tune into that previous question, but keep an eye out for this spring. All right. Hey, John. Hi. Wanted more info on a day trip to the Medina River on kayaks. Where to put in, where to take out, looking for any advice. Would like to get a group together and go. He lives in Austin and wants to know if trucks will be okay at the drop-off pickup points. It depends which drop-off and pickup points you use. Just make sure you stick to the parks and the places that are legal to park. And this is a great question. I'm not going to give explicit directions because a part of the adventure to me and best understanding the river and the safety hazards and the risks associated with it are doing the mapping yourself. I'm going to recommend that you get on Google Earth, use the distance mapping tool, and then just plot out your way along the river. That way you can see where a good place to camp might be. Drop a pin there. Check out the takeout and the put-in locations. Also, there are some outfitters in Bandera. So yeah, just try to figure it out for yourself. And I have a couple videos on how to map out routes. So tune into those and use those skills. I guarantee you it's not very hard, even though that's one of the things that people do ask for a lot are the put-in and the takeouts. And to that I say, try your hand at it. And I think you'll be able to use those skills on a particular river and repeat them. So it kind of falls into the old adage of teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. Give him a fish, he eats for a day. I don't know if I butchered that, but Yeah, definitely get out there. It's a cool place. KM Adventure. Have you ever tried an underquilt for a hammock? What's your favorite tent or hammock? So I have never used an underquilt in a hammock because whenever I do go winter camping, I'll use a tent. I have a good, nice, warm sleeping pad and sleeping bag. So that's kind of just been my go-to. I don't have a super warm underquilt. As far as my favorite hammock, I love my Ridge Outdoor Gears. It's an 11-foot long hammock that has a built-in bug net. It packs down pretty light, and it's honestly like insanely comfortable. And it's $70, if that. So I have a video about it on my channel, but I'll definitely make another video about it. Favorite tent? I have a tent by Sierra Designs. It's a 2-person, and this thing is insane. It's super light. It has a bug net that's totally clear, and so I love being able to see the trees or the skies, the sunrise, the sunset. So I love my Sierra Designs. Yeah, it's sick. You guys will see that in the Guadalupe video and subsequent videos. Hey Robert, you down to do a video on the Pecos or the Devils? Yes, the Pecos for sure. The Pecos is like the Devils, except one level up in gnarly rapids and remoteness. Actually, it's probably like 3 steps up in remoteness because you can only do 60 miles at a time. It's insane. And it's all that same beautiful geography that you'll find on the Devils. The Devils is a little more attainable. Just gotta save up some coin to pay for the outfitters. And yeah, we would love to do the Devils. It looks amazing, but it's just highly trafficked. So once again, you can go to a river like the Frio or the Guadalupe and see less people than you do on the Devils. However, the Devils is unique because it doesn't have a whole lot of commerciality along the banks. So that's really cool. All right, Laguna Rio Outdoors. Do you adjust the video settings on your GoPro? Yes, I do. I do adjust settings occasionally, but I'm going to make a whole video about that. Let me know if you guys would enjoy a GoPro video because, man, a lot of them GoPros are insanely powerful. I actually said in my Instagram story this week that if I could choose one camera, it would just be my GoPro. I'll make a video on that, so stay tuned. Have you ever paddled the Pecos or the Rio Grande? Would you consider it? 100%. I think I've talked about both the Pecos and the Rio Grande, so keep an eye out for videos on those rivers. Those are probably the 2 most beautiful rivers in Texas, if I had to guess. Just the Pecos suffers from weak flow rates, and then the Rio is literally 10 hours away from where I live. So got to plan out a weekend for that, though. All right. Hey, Bryson, y'all should go to the low country swamps of South Carolina. I would, but I have those in my backyard. So here in Houston, we're kind of in a swampy lowland area. Lots of cypress swamps, lots of bayous, lots of flat lakes, lots of marshes. So I don't know if I'll go all the way to South Carolina to do that, but there is, I think it's Lake Jocas in South Carolina that I do want to paddle around to check out the waterfalls. That's an incredible looking place. So my South Carolina goal would be there for sure. Hey Randy, how are you hammock camping the Ridge in winter? I haven't yet, but if I did, because I don't have a warm underquilt, I would just bring my 20-degree down sleeping bag and camp in there. I think I would probably do that down to 45 degrees, just because in hammock, if you don't have an underquilt, you will get breeze. And I could pair so I have a budget underquilt from Ridge Outdoor that's meant for like spring, summer, and fall. So maybe I could pair that with my 20-degree down sleeping bag and use that. That would probably get me down to 35 degrees, I would think, 35, 40 degrees. So I'll have to give that a try because I do love hammock camping, as you guys know. All right, Pat, best spot to kayak camp between El Paso and San Antonio/Austin, where you could also rent kayaks and at the same time not run into advanced rapids and whitewater. He's got friends in both areas. Hit the upper Guadalupe River in, let's see, there's a bunch of different sections, but I think the section starting in, what was it? Sisterdale. Yep, there's like a nice 10-mile section in Sisterdale. It's my Guadalupe River kayak camping 3-day that I went with like a decent sized group. So check that one out. Definitely recommend it. They do have outfitters in the area, so you'll be in luck there. All right, Yak Gods. Do you bring spring water or drinking water besides the life straw, mainly for cooking? Yes, we do. So I usually bring just like a gallon jug of water that I get from the grocery store. I'll use that for coffee, cooking, or just if the water quality isn't what I thought it would be, then I'll have some emergency water. But if we're going to a place like the Frio, then man, you honestly don't even need to pack water. Just bring your water filtration and you're good to go. And each gallon that you leave at home saves 8 pounds. That's a lot. TG Canoes and Kayaks. What's going on, guys? I just want to shout out TG Canoes and Kayaks. If you guys haven't checked them out, they have a store in San Marcos along San Marcos River. They're one of the big retailers of canoes, kayaks, and they do rentals as well, probably some outfitting. Really cool guys. They do a lot of specific kayak reviews. So if you guys are in the market for a new one, be sure to check out their videos. If you're local to them, also maybe toss them some business. That'd be really cool. Other than kayak and camera gear, what is something you can't go without on every trip? And then there's a couple funny comments. So First Time Forward says, honestly, if I had to guess for him, I'd say coffee. Correct. Our group loves to make coffee, afternoon coffees, morning coffees. And then funny enough, one thing that we don't go without is good food. We love to grill and cook while we're down on the river. So I always bring my grill, and then we'll put together a fire and we'll rake holes. I don't know, it just feels like a Western. You know, you're going out to the middle of nowhere, you're cooking up steaks, burgers, sausages, and I don't know what's more manly than meat, beer, coffee, camping, kayaking, and just being in the outdoors. So yeah, that's definitely something I wouldn't go without on every trip. Also, I would never forget my kayak, paddle, and life jacket. And then TG says the coffee hits different bright and early on the water. It does, especially when you get the water boiling and then you pour a fresh hot cup of coffee and it's steaming, but you have the water in the background trickling and the cypress trees towering over. Ooh, I'm a huge sucker for that. All right, river excursions. If you are ever interested in coming to Arkansas and floating the Buffalo River, let me know. Will do. I'll probably want to ask your advice on what you think the most scenic stretch of the Buffalo is. Because if I'm coming all the way up from Houston, which is probably like 8 hours, 9 hours, then I'll definitely want to do the best section first. So appreciate it. Thank you. All right. And last but certainly not least, Iowa Matt. What's going on, man? Hope you've been well. I know you've been trying to get down to the hill country, so we'll see if we can't get that happening soon. All right, I know I sound like a broken record, but I see that the hill country is getting precipitation. The river level doesn't seem to move much. Planning on heading your way my second week of February, but if river levels don't come up, I'm headed to Florida. Yes, the hill country is very tricky. We have what is called karst geology. What that means is that we have a huge aquifer that sits below all of these spring-fed rivers. And think of it like a cup of water. You have to fill the cup of water up with rain before it overflows. Once it does overflow, then you'll have long, sustained flow rate in these spring-fed rivers. The issue with the Texas Hill Country is that it is very arid, and so it doesn't receive enough rain, especially with the population pressure in Austin, San Antonio, and kind of that whole I-35 corridor. So this is an issue that is only going to continue getting worse. Our rivers just don't flow as full as they used to. It's unfortunate, but I do know there are some entities that monitor the Edwards Aquifer and try to do the best things for it as far as keeping it at a certain level. They try not to run it too dry, but at the end of the day, we have a bunch of huge cities that are pulling from it, and what that does is just decrease flow rates in the rivers. So you really have to go immediately after a rain, and sometimes it could rain extremely hard, and all that does is just get absorbed into the aquifer. The hill country is a beast, but when conditions align, I don't think you can beat it. Florida. Yes, Florida is a place I want to go. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with Trip Smith. He goes around to all those different springs, and it looks incredible. I would love to do that one day. So I've gone freediving in the Florida Springs before, and it's probably the coolest place I've ever dove. I mean, it's like insane. And of course, Florida gets a ton of water, and so the rivers are always flowing. They just don't have much elevation, so there aren't really rapids per se. And I'm a sucker for rapids, so I'm a huge sucker for the Texas Hill Country, spring-fed rivers and big old rapids. All right, now as far as videos I'd like to see, some bike packing, stealth camping would be cool. That would be really cool. I would love to do a little bit of bike packing. Because we have the mountain bikes, I go mountain biking all the time with my buddies, and I do think that would be interesting. Let's see. Bikepacking, stealth camping, or even a trip up to Wisconsin for a multi-river trip. Yeah, if I'm going to Wisconsin, it's probably a plane ticket for me because I think what would that be? 2,000 miles? 1,500, 2,000 miles? So yeah, going up to Wisconsin would be sick. I saw Pete's, I think it was the Namakagon River. That looked beautiful. He did it during fall, and you guys up in the north have the most incredible fall weather. Down here in Houston, fall hits in like December, and I don't know, foliage doesn't change much. We have a lot of hardwoods that don't really have seasonal leaves, if you will, just a lot of pollen, which is starting to spring right now. Yeah, spring has already arrived in Houston. It's crazy. All right, I'll convince the River Kings to get out here, or some Buffalo River in Arkansas. Listen, hey, there must be something up with the buffalo because a lot of you guys have mentioned it so far. So I think I need to get on out there. Or the granddaddy of them all, let's head up to Idaho as a group and do some whitewater rafting. Yes, that would be sick. So I've seen this, I think it's the Middle Fork is what it's called, but it's in the Frank Church Wilderness, and you load up a bunch of different whitewater rafts, and you're literally in the middle of nowhere. I mean, for days on end. So I've talked to some buddies about doing that. It's kind of like one of those bucket list trips. I don't know if I'll ever get around to it, but certainly I would love to, because that would be an epic video, obviously with epic people. And anyway, guys, that is going to wrap up the questions. Thank y'all so much for asking them and being inquisitive, because a lot of these questions give me video ideas so I can more in-depth answer your questions and interact with y'all, because as the community grows, it gets harder and harder to interact with everybody. I think you'll notice that in the comments, unless you're a troll or asking for put in and takeout locations, I respond to everybody, and sometimes even have conversations. That's one of the best parts about this growing community. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in to yet another video. I'll see y'all on the river. Take care.